got a couple of questions yesterday when I posted that I no longer had to go back to radiation, and somebody had commented, they're like, but wait, weren't you done with radiation before? I'm so confused. I was. This celebration yesterday was I no longer have follow ups with radiation. And I realized a lot of people, and myself included before I got into it, I didn't understand how cancer treatments and how the diagnosis, the treatment, and then the after comes into play. And I figured like I would explain it because if you have somebody going through cancer in your life, you might want to understand more about what they're either going through, about to go through, and how it will continue for years on, and how we may celebrate a milestone that you don't understand, but there's a reason it's like super celebrated for us. So I'm going to start off with in July of 2022 is when I woke up and I had a tumor on the side of my neck. And yes, you can just wake up one day and there's a tumor there that wasn't there the day before. That is possible. And then so I had that and I started the whole diagnosis process. That in itself was a whirlwind, and some of it was a lot to process, and my memories of it are there's a lot of it that blurs into one. So I got into my primary care doctor who started me with, for my case, I went through x-rays, MRI, CAT scan, ultrasound, and then a bunch of different lab work. That wasn't ultimately the doctor who diagnosed me, but that was the doctor who went, yes, this is cancer. Now we need to get you to a specialist to figure out what type of cancer it is. And because of where my initial tumor was, they weren't sure exactly what kind it was. So initially, I was sent to an ear, nose, and throat specialist who specialized in ear, nose, and throat oncology. I mean, it was my neck, ear, nose, and throat. Makes sense. They determined that it was not in the systems that they would actually deal with. Like if I had like cancer in my tonsils, that would be the doctor that I would go through. So that's when I got sent to a different oncologist who specialized in hematology, which is a blood cancer. So again, it's a whole process, and you might see a bunch of different doctors before you get to the right one that treats your type of cancer. From there, the most common thing next is a biopsy of some kind. For me, I had a needle biopsy, and I had I had my PET scan at relatively the same time. My needle biopsy came back inconclusive because I had two types of cancer that you don't normally see together. So what they were getting from the small little amounts they pulled out with the needle, it didn't completely make sense. So then I went and actually had to have a surgical biopsy. We had gotten the results of my PET scan back, which is also another scan that typically can be ordered, and that's going to tell you like how far spread this cancer is. When I started, I just had the neck cancer. And when we got the PET scan back, that's when we realized I literally had tumors from my chin down to the top of my thighs. I was full of it. So when we got the inconclusive results back of the needle biopsy, then that's when I had to go have a surgical biopsy, and they actually removed an entire lymph node, and that got sent off to different places for testing, and then it eventually came back from not Beth Israel, Mass General in Boston Mass General. That was who was actually able to finally diagnose my cancer, just because mine was a rare combination. It was. So mine took a little bit more, but most people, the hospital they go to for their oncology treatments, they can do everything unless you start getting into the weird ones. And I'm going to tell you this too. A lot of people don't realize, like, if you say you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you just go, oh, okay, you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. There's over 50 kinds of non-Hodgkin's. So you have a base title, but then there's going to be like a different flavor below it. And then, so that began my process. When I first saw the doctor and we were getting ready to do all of the biopsies and everything, he had told me that, based on preliminary, that my route of treatment would have been just immunotherapy. But then we started getting results back and we realized my cancer was more widespread. They called it at least stage 3 because of how many quadrants of my body it was in. It was very close it was on the line of being stage 4. So initially I had in my head I was going to go for immunotherapy, which is a lot less aggressive and brutal on the body, than chemotherapy and radiation and all the other ones. You don't lose your hair with immunotherapy. That's why there could be a lot of people in your life that have cancer and still have their hair, and you're like, what? It's not like Hollywood portrays anymore. Most of us don't actually lose our hair. We'll have changes and differences. So then we got all the results back and went, oh, this is worse than we thought it was, which was a blow. It was. And then my treatment plan became chemo and immunotherapy. So I was on 2 different treatment plans. I continued on those plans for, it was about 18 months, little over that. No, it was 18 months. 18 months I was on those 2 plans. Then I stopped responding to treatment. And my treatment plan had to change. They kept the immunotherapy the same, they changed up my chemo, and then we added radiation. So I had 3 different tracks of therapies I was going through. So continued with the immunotherapy, continued with the chemo, added the radiation. The radiation was very spot specific and wasn't nearly as long. So I started radiation, I got through radiation, I rang the bell for radiation, and that was complete. That is a post I've done in the past that people were like, but wait, you said you were done. But even though I was done with radiation, I had to keep seeing this oncologist just to monitor things for a certain period of time. Yesterday, I hit the I am done. I have no more follow-ups. I can 100% close the door on the radiation journey in my life. Thank God, because that was brutal. But after this was done, I was still going through immunotherapy and chemo. So that it continued. I'm going to flip the fingers here. This is going to be chemo. This is going to be immunotherapy. You'll understand why. So I finished immunotherapy in December of last year, but I was still on my chemo. So I got to ring the bell for immunotherapy. I finished my chemo. So now that is also done, but they're not completely done. The door isn't closed on those 2. Every 3 months, I still have to go back in for appointments with the doctor who ran my chemotherapy and my immunotherapy, because there's a high likelihood my cancer will come back because of the type, because of the way it is, and because I've already stopped responding to treatments once. So you will see me keep going with my journey of my chemotherapy, immunotherapy doctor, and I'm going to have appointments every 3 months, scans every 6 months for the foreseeable future. I have through the next 2 years all scheduled out with my appointments for that. So if you have somebody going through the cancer journey and they get excited because they hit a milestone, but then you see them post the next day that they're doing something else, be excited with them, please. Please, please, please be excited with them, because it is a huge milestone. And it does mean that, doors are starting to close. The light at the end of the tunnel is coming up. Battling cancer is so different for everybody. And now some people, they could find out they have a tumor, have surgery, and they're done, and they just have follow-ups. Some people, it's, they only do one of the therapies and they're done, and the door closes and they just have follow-ups. Excuse me. So just know all of our paths are different. And if we get excited about something, just get excited with us, because it really does, it means the world that somebody else cares. Because unfortunately, a lot of our cancers, they're lifelong and they're going to keep going, or there's going to be something going on forever just to make sure that it doesn't come back, or they get it as soon as possible if it does come back. So that's, in the nutshell, my cancer journey. And a lot of people go through very similar ones. But like I said, theirs could be a lot shorter. It could be a lot longer. It could be, this is not treatable. But if somebody gets excited, get excited with them. And know that if they post the next day, they're not just like, what the heck? They really do have stuff that's going to keep going. But we just need to celebrate the little things sometimes, because sometimes that's all that keeps us going. If you have questions, put them in the comments. I will answer them. I know this was a long video, but I felt it was worth it to put this out there so people can better help those that are fighting the battle. So y'all have a great day, and thank you for being a part of my journey. I can't tell you how much it's meant to me.